Oh, I want to welcome everybody, and I assume that Amios is putting everybody else on mute for the meantime. We want to welcome everybody. I guess people will be coming in, and maybe we'll have to re-welcome them as they come in. I want to thank, as always, the Mashgiach and the Tzevet, the Rebbeim, for putting this together, willing to talk and share of their experience. And I also want to thank Arna Shai for making a particularly strong effort for helping out on this event, putting the ideas together and encouraging all of us to be more focused on such an important topic. It's obviously relevant to each one of us, whatever age we are. We're it's children, grandchildren, it's Hashem. Whatever, there's no end to the lessons we need to learn about Chinuch. Anyway, so we're not going to waste any time, I'm not going to speak too much. I'm going to ask right away the Mashgiach to say however many words he's going to say to introduce into the topic of Chinuch Habanim, giving this some direction in how we can best teach and train our children in the Derech HaTorah.
Okay, this is a very, very crucial topic, and I'm going to try to give certain concepts rather than recent experiences. And I'm basically, first of all, I want to say a special thanks to Oren Hashai. It was his idea to do it. He actually wrote out the whole outline. I'm trying to follow his outline. He did an excellent job. And we really appreciate, Oren, your work. Thank you very much. I also want to thank Rabbi Carla for organizing it, and as always, again, putting it together. And of course, I have to thank Joey Apter, the technician, and Eitzion. Right, without him, nothing would work. So we're talking about Chinuch. We're talking about Chinuch Habanim. Yeah. What is Chinuch? What is Chinuch? So I happen to be learning with our Dorm Council Levi a sefer called Chayvis HaTalmidim. This is a sefer. This is a Pietzner Rebbe. Pietzner Rebbe was the Rebbe in the Warsaw Ghetto, right? He went on Kiddush Hashem. He was a Rebbe in the Warsaw Ghetto, and he more than a century ago, already understood that the children are changing. We have a different world, right? He perceived it, and he told us how to relate to it. And by the way, what I'm using is a Hakdama, the introduction to Chayvis HaTalmidim, which I said for many, many years, and the Neveh Tzion is totally based upon this. Our whole approach to Chinuch comes from this. He understood that children are no longer sponges ready to absorb with love everything they hear from the Rebbe. That's happening no more. He said they look upon a Rebbe sometimes as an outsider, as someone trying to impose on them, limit their freedom, and it's a whole different world. That's what he said. I'm going to discuss 4 or 5 points from the Chayvis HaTalmidim. But first, let's understand, what is Chinuch? What is Chinuch, right? We know that the pasuk in Mishlei says, Chanuch lenar al pi darko, gam ki yaskin o yasu mimeno. Right? Chanuch lenar al pi darko. What is Chinuch, right? So, one thing that he says right away, if it's just telling the children what to do, telling your class, if you're a mechanech, telling your class what to do, right? Or even teaching them habits, right? If that alone is what chinuch is, then it's very different. You don't even have to know the child well. You're telling everyone what to do, you're instructing. And you're trying to build habits. But those are tools for chinuch. Rashi tells us in Breshis, what is the word chinuch? What does it mean? to guide a person to enter his life task. Right? That he is a future, that he in the future is going to live. To guide a person to enter his life task that he in the future is going to live. That's Rashi in Bereshis. That's Chinuch. So the first thing is, we're not talking about the now. We're not talking about the now. We're talking about what he's going to be in the future. That when he's no longer at home, when he's no longer under the jurisdiction of his parents, when he's no longer in the yeshiva or school, whatever you're, right? He's no longer by the teacher. When he goes out into the world, what's he going to take with him? What's he going to retain? What's it going to be about? And obviously, if that's the whole mabat, the whole outlook is for the future, so then we have to know the child well. We have to know his potential. We have to know his character traits. We have to know his natias, we have to know him and understand him very, very well, right? Because if we don't, then we're not going to prepare him for life. We're not going to reach his insides, his guts, and prepare him for life. And that is a task of chinuch. We have to know the child very, very well. And I'll be dark. That's it. It's the mabat for the future, but it's al pi darko, according to what he is, his character traits, his natiya, his tendencies. That's what we have to do. Second point, that the Rebbe tells us, the Chovos HaTalmid tells us, we're talking about ikvasat Mashiach. We're talking about the time before Mashiach is coming. He says, and what the nar ba'atzmo, the young person today thinks, he choshevet atzmo le'ish b'terem bo ma'odo. Before he's really grown up, he's a man. He's an ish, no? And there's a very important totza'ah. There's something which comes because that if he thinks that he is already a mature adult, even though he doesn't act like it, right? His behavior isn't like it, but he thinks himself a mature adult. You have to get him to think he's being mechanech himself. He has to be mechanech himself. That's the second point of the Chovos HaTalmidim. He must be mechanech himself. What does that mean? That means that ask him, how would you want to organize your day? Maybe we should start with what do you think you should start with? If he says goals, great, that's terrific. If he doesn't, okay. What do you think about goals? Do you think that's a good idea? And what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? Let him say that. Then he has to explain, right? If he got into a fight with his sister, right, and it's not a one-time occurrence, right? Tell me something. What when she starts picking on you and when she starts looking for trouble, what do you think would be the proper way to talk to her? How can you diffuse it without coming to a real fight, right? What do you think is the best way? Did you think you acted proper? Could have been better, or maybe there's something to do now. Maybe he'll take. Maybe he owes an apology. Okay, let him think about it. Let him be his own mechanech. Right? That is a way to success. That's a way that is going to work. Also, number 3. Also a pasuk in Mishlei, just like Chinuch Lanar. Al tochach leitz pen yisanecha, hochach lechochem yahavecha. Shlomo Melech tells us, don't chastise a leitz, right? He'll hate you. Chastise a chochem. Says the Shiloh HaKodesh, a tremendous yisod, which we all know maybe, but it's good to go over it again. The Shiloh HaKodesh says, you know what he's saying? Don't make him into a lace when you chastise him. Don't tell him that he messed up. He's a troublemaker. He's terrible. How many of our Talmidim come to Neveh because they They were told by rabbis that they're no good. And they believe it. And then they act according to they act according to their label. You label them, they'll act according to. No, don't make him a late, make him a chacham, right? Which means two things. One, it means that you're saying you're too good for this behavior. You know, you're too intelligent to do a thing like that. You should, of course, you know better. You're much too intelligent to do a thing like that. Or you're you know, with your midos, you know, with your midos, criticize the midos, the behavior, not him. Don't criticize him, number one. And number two, on the contrary, try to build him up, right? Because you have to build up a self-esteem. And more than trying to get the behavior that you're looking for, the momentary behavior, more important than that is to build a self-esteem. Now, I have a whole shiur, which I'm not going to give now, on why today in this ecosystem of Mashiach, self-esteem is such a problem. But it is. Believe me, and take a look, you see. Self-esteem, even though they may pretend to be, you know, but beneath it all, there's a lack of self-respect, self-esteem. And you have to build that up. So don't make him a lace, make him a chacham. The Biasana says, make him a chacham. Don't embarrass him. Someone like you who takes life so seriously, you know, you should know better. Okay. That's yeah. Now you ask, you know, there should you yell at her? That was one of the questions. Oren, should you yell at her? Absolutely not. Yelling is harmful. It hurts, right? In general, you have to know that if you try to be mechanech and you use chinuch as an expression of your bad midos, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's bad for you. It's bad for the child. The child will not respect you. It's not the right thing to do. Don't yell. Yelling is no good. You have to talk quietly. When necessary, you have to talk firmly, but you don't yell. You never yell. And I want to talk too much about punishment, about hitting, right? But when a 2-year-old runs out to the middle of the street, you don't start explaining to him that cars can harm you and it's dangerous, son. And a 2-year-old runs out to the street, so then give him a punch. Because that's what he needs to understand, and that's the time to give him a punch. But for other things, right? For you want him to change his behavior, older child, hitting is not the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to do. And we know from Gedolim, right, that they said that there's one special gadol who said, you know, come back and he said, I wait a week before I will hit the child. And by that time, he probably decided it's not the right thing to do. So hitting the child is not the answer. Don't label. And we said before, a child tends to live up to labels. Don't label the child, right? You know, I always tell when we first started learning, it was in Area in Baltimore. My first 6 months in the yeshiva, right? First year in the yeshiva. And someone wanted to ask a fellow to let, we got to get people to put away the Sforah. So someone said, why don't you ask the twins to do it, my brother and I. And someone said, leave them alone. They must meet them. Let them learn, right? So I heard this concept, a masmid. I'm a masmid. So I decided, I'll live up to it. I want to live up to it. I tried to live up to it. When you hear a label, you try to live up to it. Unfortunately, it works in the negative sense also, right? In the negative sense also. When you say this guy's a troublemaker, right? I always tell the story. Lee, if you're listening, forgive me. I always tell this story that somebody in high school got the label as the biggest troublemaker. He spent more time in the principal's office than he did in class, and he used to throw things. He got into a lot of trouble. He came to Neveh, and he was assigned to my shir the first few days. He didn't come, right? So later I came in, I asked him, how are you feeling? Are you feeling better? He said, who said I was sick? Who the blankety blank blank told you I was sick? So I said, listen, to me, you impressed me as a serious fellow. I know you didn't come to waste your year. I know you came to accomplish. So you don't come to shir, you must be sick. So I came to see how you're feeling, right? Well, the next day he came to shir. And it was that way till the end of the year, right? Because I gave him a chance to live up to the reputation that he's a serious fellow. He came to accomplish things. So that's very, very important, right? And finally, I want to say that the most important thing, right? He told me about having a room where Leah can always feel comfortable, right? The most important thing is just love them. Just love them. By the way, this is a book about David Schrank, who was a Neveh Rebbe probably before Neveh existed. And it's an amazing book. It's good to read, right? But just love them. You have to love them. You have to love them. And you have to show the love, and you have to express it, right? When my grandchildren come, this is terrible. It's terrible when my grandchildren, because you can't hug them. I go like this. I take off my mask. I see my smile. I go like this. I want to hug them. You have to express it. You have to love them, right? That's the most important thing. Unconditional love is a prerequisite for any type of chinuch, right? If they cause you trouble, right? I always told the story that one told the mashgiach, how can I love them? They cause so much trouble. And he said, that's when you need to love them more, if they're causing you trouble, right? You have to have unconditional love. All right. So again, I think those are 5 things that we talked about. I hope it didn't speak too long. 5 things we talked about. 1, Mabat was the future. When he grows, when he leaves. 2, let him be his own mechanech. He has to teach himself. 3, he's a chacham and not a leitz, right? And 4, don't label anyone. And 5, just love him. Just love him. That's what I have to say. And thank you for listening. Let's continue.
Thank you very much, Mashgiach. Always inspiring. And as is well known in Chinuch, that learning by the examples and seeing how it's done is at least as much as the words, if not a lot more. And before I ask, Rabbi Folk's going to speak next to Mitzvah Shem. Looking forward to hearing his words. And then I didn't give the schedule. He'll be speaking about 20 minutes approximately. Then Rabbi Golden will speak about approximately 20 minutes. And then we will have question and answer. Of course, you'll excuse me, Rabbi Folk, for just the second Poland trip. There was a fellow on the plane that we went flying over. He decided to be a little bit social with one of the other people on the plane. And when I got off that plane, it was like, Mashgiach, I want him sent back now. I'm not interested. And Mashgiach's like, he means so well. He's going to be changed on the trip. It was like, okay, Mashgiach, you win. That's one of the 73,000 reasons the Mashgiach's the Mash, and I'm Charlap. Even though it's okay, but anyway, so I just wanted to share that story. So when he says you got to love him, all you guys out there know what the Mashgiach is talking about. Anyway, I'm not going to take any time. Rabbi Falk, we're looking forward to your Divrei Chizik, your insight. And
thank you very much, Rabbi Lap. I also want to thank Aaron Oren Hashai, this was his idea. I hope he's listening. Baruch Hashem, the Mashgiach has given us an overview about Chinuch, and I would like to speak about maybe some more of the practical things, personal experiences that I've had. First of all, I want gentlemen to know, ladies, that being a parent is the most important job that you will ever have in your life. It's the job that will have the greatest impact on you and on the world. It's also, without a doubt, it's going to be the most meaningful experience that you've ever had in your life. And a person, in order to be a good parent, has to invest, and he has to put a lot of effort into it. And you, Mirza Shem, you could be a CEO of a great big company and make millions and millions of dollars. But what you will do with your children will impact generations and generations and thousands and thousands and thousands of your descendants. Like I always say, you guys are the beginning of a massive, massive dynasty. You will have, Mirza Shem, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. In a few generations, you're going to be a whole tribe of people. And it all is going to depend, what those kids look like is going to depend on the chinuch that you give your children. There's no doubt what the Mashgiach said is right. The most important thing, I think, for a child is that he should have very positive self-esteem. He should believe in himself. He should know that he can accomplish things. There was a study done. It was a unbelievable study where what they did was they took, I think, 18 different classes in an elementary school, and they gave them IQ tests, all the children. And then they picked out from that whole school, those 18 classes, the 20% of the most gifted children who had the greatest potential of succeeding in the future in their lives. And they told the teachers that these children are very gifted children, and they followed their development. And these children outscored, outperformed all of the other children. So it was obvious, it was clear that your intelligence, your IQ, is the major factor in your succeeding. The only problem is that the list that they gave to the teachers of these outstanding students was not based on their IQs. It was a random list that they just made up. But the teachers believed in those kids, and they thought that these kids had tremendous potential. And the kids felt that they had tremendous potential. And therefore, those kids did unbelievable things. Every single parent, you have to know that you have to be the number one cheerleader, the number one believer in your children. Your child has to know that he is the greatest kid in the world. Every single one of your kids. And you have to instill that in your kids. And if you are able to do that, your kid will be tremendously successful. Whether he has a high IQ, a low IQ, it doesn't make a bit of difference. If he believes that he'll be able to accomplish, then he'll take his potential and he'll use it to the fullest. But you have to be willing to invest. You have to be willing to spend time. You have to be willing to, when you come home tired from work, you have to be willing to work with your kid. Now, gentlemen, I'm going to tell you, I'm not a big mechanech. The Mashgiach is a big mechanech, but I can tell you from experiences that I personally have. I believe that you must be on top and know where your children are at. It's critical. I have a son who today, Baruch Hashem, is a big Talmud Chacham. He's a phenomenal kid. But I began to notice, I think in his knapsack that he would go take to school, he had wrappers from candy bars. And he wasn't getting those candy bars at home. I didn't know where he was getting them. So I believe this is a mice of probably 30 years ago. So I asked him, he told me his friends gave it to him. He had all kinds of stories, but it didn't smell right. So I followed him to school. I stood behind him. He didn't see me. He was a little kid, 6, 7 years old. And he walked to school. And very interestingly enough, when we got to the Makolet, he walked down the hill and tells us, when we got to the Makolet, I see him. He makes a left turn, and he goes into the Makolet. And I followed him into the Makolet. I stood out of his distance. He didn't see me. And I watched him. And it was a winter, and he had a heavy coat. It was a winter coat. It was like one of those bomber jackets. And I see him. He walks down. He's this little kid, 6, 7 years old. And he goes to the candy, opens his jacket. He was really smooth. He was a real operator. And I see him grabbing this, sticking it in his jacket, grabbing this, sticking it in his jacket. I followed him outside, right? He walked right out. He smiled at the owner of the store. He walked right outside. As he walked outside, I grabbed him on his shoulders from behind. He jumped, and I said, my dear son, I said, did you take something from the store? So I saw that he took, right? And I said, you took something. And I opened his jacket, and I said, we're going back in that store. We're going to go together. And we're going to go to the owner of the store, and we're going to give it back. And we're not going to do this anymore. Because you are a very chashuv kid. You come from a very chashuv family, and you're a very good kid. And we don't steal. And now we're going back into that store, and we're going to give it back. And he did not want to go into that store and give it back. He told me he would give it to me, and I could give it back. I said, no, we are going in together, and we're going to give it back. And he says he's embarrassed. I said, I'm also embarrassed. But we took something that wasn't ours, and we got to give it back. And we went back in. I had to push him, right? And finally, we went back in, and he was tears coming down his cheeks, and we gave it back. And if you don't know what's going on with your kid, so then by the time things develop and he starts taking things, I think stealing is one thing that you can't let your children do. But even if you catch him, and you got to be on top of your kid, you got to check into what's going on. You have to call the rebellion. You have to be on top. You got to watch your kid. You got to be interested in it. You got to follow. I missed davening that day because I had to go I missed the minyan. But that was much more important than me davening with the minyan. You have got to be on top of your child. Another thing, you have to be very careful to pick for your child the best school that you possibly can, with the best friends, the best chaverim, the best teachers. But you have to realize that you can rely on the school absolutely zero. You are the one who's in charge of the chinuch of your child. You have to be on top of your son. I had a son, he was in the cheder. They sent me every Erev Shabbos, you get the daf, the page with the parsha and everything that he's learning, and they give you a report. And they tell me he's doing great. But I read with him, and I don't think he's reading so well. So I went to the school and I said to the Rebbe, does my son know how to read? He says, look, your son's doing fantastic. He's a really good kid. I said, test him. Please test him. He says, fine, they're going to test him. I called him up the next day. He tells me, your son is doing fine. I learned with my kid again. And he would come home, I would read with him, we would learn together, and he wasn't doing well. And the school thought he was doing well. You have got to be on top of your kid. It's crazy how many kids come to Neveh and they can't read. It's such a terrible thing for the kid's self-esteem, for the kid's confidence. If that kid doesn't learn how to read, it kills the kid. It's so painful for that kid. There's no child that doesn't want to succeed. But so many of the kids, there's 30 kids in a class, it's hard for the teacher to really be on top of the kid. They try, they do the best they can. When I said you can expect zero from this school, the schools can be fantastic, they can do unbelievable things. But you have to feel, right? You have to assume that my child, I don't know if he's getting anything in the school. I have to make sure the kid's learning how to do math. I have to make sure my kid's learning how to read English. I have to make sure my kid's learning how to read Hebrew. It's your responsibility. And if you don't sit on top of the school and on the teachers and on your child, so then chas v'sholem, there's a big sakana that he will drift away. I have a son who's a tremendous Baal Kishra, but all of a sudden he started in school. He starts bringing home test 40s. It was crazy. I couldn't understand what was going on with it. So me and my wife, we took him down. We took him to a place that was called Machon Rud. It was an institute for kids who are having problems learning. And we took him for an evaluation. The guy sat with my son. He checked him. He tested him. Then when we finished, after 2 or 3 hours, he sat him on his lap. And he starts learning Mishnayos with my son. And he starts reading with him. And my son, he was a smart kid. The kid really knew. So this head of this educational institution, this Machon Rud, he tells me, listen, I want to tell you what's going on. Your son is a very, very smart kid, and he's bored. He's bored. So he doesn't even try. He doesn't care. He says, you got to get him a private tutor that'll learn with him and motivate him and stimulate him. You can have a brilliant kid and he can be falling and he can chas v'shalom get lost in school. You can have a kid who needs help. You got to be on top of that. You cannot trust anybody else with the chinuch of your child. I think another thing that I've seen with my children, and I've seen with many, young kids, is that you have to be very, very aware of what's going on with him at different periods in his life. There's a certain approach that you can use when your child's young, where I think you can be much, stricter in the sense that the expectations that you have. But if that doesn't work for your son, so then you have to make adjustments. You have to always be ready to make adjustments and to realize that something happened and I got to readjust. And every situation that you're in is the best situation you can be in right now. Right now in this situation, even if your son got into trouble and he's not reading and the rest of the class is reading. Right now, you are in a situation where you can make the 100% best decision for your son's education. Chas v'shalom, it's never chas v'shalom lost, and he's so far behind, and there's no hope. But you have to be in touch with what's going on right now in order to be able to make those decisions. You got to know where your son's at. If you don't find out your son can read until 5th or 6th grade, that's already done a lot of damage to his self-esteem. He's been sitting in a class and feeling that he's a lo yitzchak, that he's not successful, that he doesn't know, that he doesn't understand. There's no reason why any child should have to go through that tsar and that feeling that he doesn't understand and he's not getting it for so many years. If the schools, and if we have to be responsible. We have to be on top of the schools. We have to watch our kids. We have to be on top of them, and we have to know what they're doing. It's a critical thing. The home has got to be a place where he realizes and he knows that my parents, no matter what I do, okay, when my son stole at that store, I never ever chas v'shalom said to him that you're a ganav. I told him, folks are chashuva people. We're chashuva people. Folks don't do that. You're a chashuva bacher. You don't do that. We don't do such things. You are a tzaddik yisrael d'olam. Now, I have to be moided that I've smacked my kids. It depends on the kid. Many of my kids, I never smacked them because I don't think they needed it. But I had some kids who were tough kids, okay? And until you gave him a smack, the guy it was almost like when you gave him a smack, he realized, oh, I didn't realize that you were serious. But you never give your kid a smack when you're angry. You got to wait. He did something wrong. You explain to him, this is what you did, and I love you. I love you so much. And because I love you, and because I know what a wonderful person you are, and your potential, what a great kid you are, that's why I'm giving you a smack. And when my son took stuff from the makolet, I thought he gave him a smack. But as soon as I gave him a smack, I hugged him, and we cried together. Because we don't do that. That's not who you are. And b'li ayin hara, I think that it's important. I think it's important for us to explain to our children what's right and what's wrong. We have to be on top of it. I don't think a parent should be afraid if his child does something wrong to let him know that that's wrong. But it's not, again, like the mashgiach said, it's not that you're a bad person. Chas v'shalom, you're a good person. And that's why what you did doesn't make any sense. But that's a tremendous challenge for a parent. Because when a kid does something that gets you upset, and the natural reaction is, ah! But you can't do that. You have to control yourself because your job as a parent is to be the number one believer in your child. Even, and like the mashgiach said, more so when your child's doing something wrong. I can't emphasize it enough. B'li ayin hara, even if I would smack my kid, I'd give him a kiss afterwards. And b'li ayin hara, my kids appreciate it. And to this day, Baruch Hashem, they're good kids, but I think a parent should not be afraid to clearly tell his kid what's right and what's wrong. Again, but it can't at all be in any way hurting the child's self-esteem. We should push him to be great, and he can be great. And you can't fake that in showing your child how great he is. You have to find things in every single child, and every single child special, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave each child tremendous gifts, and you have to look for those things. He helps. He can help you fix things. He sings beautifully. Whatever it is, he has a heart of gold. You have to find those things in your child that are special, and you have to amplify them, and you have to blow them up to such tremendous proportions that he should realize that he has tremendous koiches and tremendous potential. And he's going to be able to do beautiful, beautiful things. You know, people have a hard time with their Shabbos table. I think your Shabbos table has to be the most fun thing for your children. And their parents who want to say Divrei Torah, and that's very nice to say Divrei Torah, but you have to adapt what you're doing at your table to your children. Your Shabbos table is for your children. We're raising children. That's our most important job in this world. And you have to, if the stories, to sing with them. I have this chair here, right? It's one of these chairs with wheels. I would put my kids on my lap, and we would sing, and I would ride all over the place with them. We would ride all over the room, and we would bang on the table. And they love Shabbos. They love Shabbos. They love being at the table because it was fun. And if I have a need to say Divrei Torah, so I can go out and find a friend in the shul, and I can tell him my Divrei Torah. Or if I want, I can stand in front of a mirror, and I can give a drush in front of a mirror. But when you're there with your kids, they are the focus of the table. And if you have your best friends there and you have guests there, but you have to remember your Shabbos tables for your children, and you have to make it enjoyable for them. Being a parent is like I said in the beginning, is probably the most difficult but most important job that we will ever have. We come into it with absolutely no training to be a parent. It's such an important job, and we come with no training. But the most important thing, I think, is that you should be a partner with your wife. You should work together. That's a whole long schmooze. I once saw that the greatest thing you can do for your children is to love their mother. And you work as a team with your wife. And I think a lot of times our wives nag us to do things, come home early, you got to spend time with the kids, you have to take them out, you have to play with them. And those are the times, she's right, those are the times that you really bond with your son. And your son realizes that I love my father loves me, and I can do things wrong, and my father still loves me, and my mother still loves me. And those are the times that you build the foundation from which you'll be able to be mechanech your child, because you are his number one fan. And when he has problems in school, you don't have to go in and tell the teachers that they're wrong or the Rebbe that they're wrong, but your son has to understand that as a person, you support him 100%, and you're 100% on his side. It could be you did something wrong. We have to admit that we did something wrong. But again, that's got no bearing on who we are. And you are the best kid in the world. And I know that. And you have to know that. Mirz Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who gives us this job without training, he doesn't give us nisyonos that we can't meet. And I daven every single day. I have in my sitter. I have a special tefillah that my children should grow up. There's a beautiful tefillah from the Chazon Ish. And I daven for my children every single day. To this day, I still daven for my children. And Kadosh Baruch Hu will give us the siyata d'shmaya. We have to turn to him. Tefillah is an unbelievably important thing in raising children. Your wife has to daven. You have to daven. And a Kadosh Baruch Hu will give us, Mirz Hashem, the seichel to stumble through parenthood, learning. And when you make a mistake, and we do make mistakes, you should tell your child, I'm sorry. You can apologize. I've apologized many, many times to my children. I made mistakes. I apologize. I give them a kiss. I hope you'll forgive me. I love you. And B'li Ayin Hara, Mirz Hashem, we will have siyata d'shmaya, and we should be zeiche to banim, uvnei banim, and banos, oiskim b'Torah, and avodah. Shkoyach.
Thank you very, very much, Rabbi Paul. Always good, and thank you for some of the stories. Hope the kids don't find out about the stories that we told, but very, very enjoyable. It was a nice flavor. We have the schus. I think this is the first time in terms of live involvement having Rabbi Golden with us. So he'll speak also, approximately 20 minutes. No rush, and after that we'll have questions, and we'll talk about how we'll hopefully do the question and answer period. Thank you, Rabbi Falk. Rabbi Goldman, we're looking forward to hearing your words.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Excellent.
Okay, Baruch Hashem. I want to thank the yeshiva for giving me the opportunity to share a few words about this tremendous topic, the topic of chinuch. I'm a little bit at awe, speaking after my father-in-law, the Mashgiach, and Rabbi Falk. Who am I to say a few words? But Baruch Hashem, I was able for a number of years to have a family and a daughter that's 28. My youngest is 4. So we have many children from different ages. Perhaps a few ideas that maybe we can share. When we read Haggadah on Pesach, so when the Bishop tried to afflict us, so it says, try to afflict us. That's Amalenu. What's us? Amalenu, our toil in life. So the Balagada says, Elu Habanim. These are our children. The person has to realize, like Rabbi Falk mentioned, my father-in-law mentioned, that our life's goal, our life's job is to be able to raise our children and bring them to the place that we want to help them to come to the point where they want to be able to be successful. A person has to realize it's not your child, it's the child that was given to you. It's a bikadon. God gave that child to you because he feels that if you use the tools, then you will be the one that will be able to help the most. The question is how to go about doing that. Sometimes the person gets frightened or discouraged because he knows the results of him. If he doesn't help his children, then the result will be very, very difficult, to say the least. There's a question I give. The person is trying to drive a car. So after the person learns the rules of driving, they're responsible, weigh out the obstacles, avoid them, or drive as far as possible around them. We all know that a person is stressed out while driving, and he can wind up doing something reckless, damaging himself, others, his car. The trick is in a relaxed way to fulfill your responsibilities, up against obstacles, see them, work around them, and try to be as responsible as possible. However, now this is a big however. There's a difference to when you're driving the car by yourself. The idea of you driving the car is you got to control the car. To move it in the direction that you feel based on your logic, on your driving education to drive properly. The problem is that you have a driver sitting at your side with his own steering wheel and his own gas pedal and his own brakes, and he wants to drive the car in a different direction. And you're driving your car, if you're not going to allow him to be able to be included in the decision for how you're driving the car, then that's going to affect your driving the car properly as well. And that, I think, is part of the challenge of him, where a person has to realize that I have to be able to help my child, teach him the values of life, and at the same time, not taking away his identity and his character, of which he needs to be able to develop, to be able to give his chelek, his part to the world. So the question is, what am I expected to do? A person has to realize that you're not expected to make your child you. There's a famous Maisa, I never heard it from the direct source, but somebody told me the Maisa. It's sure not, definitely true. It's a Maisa with the Altum Sabata. The Altum Sabata was the source of most yeshivas that we know today. Lakewood, Baltimore, Tarvadas, Rav Yaakov, Rav Aaron, Rav Ruderman. And one of the biggest Talmidim of the Altum Sabata was Rav Yerucham Levovitz. And he became the Mashgiach in Mir Yeshiva. Rav Lezer Finkel, the Rosh Yeshiva, Mir Yeshiva, took him as the Rosh Yeshiva, as the Mashgiach. His charisma and his power was something tremendous. He was able to get to the Talmidim and build them and take him into tremendous Talmidim. And when the Alter came to see how his Talmud was doing, he came to him and he said, Rav Yerucham, you're doing a wonderful, wonderful job. But there's a problem here. They're all a bunch of Yeruchamos. They're all you. They're all exactly like you. You need to be able to take them and build their identity. That's what the Alter had told me. So the idea of chinuch is trying to be able to instill the values that you know, that you've learned, the values of Yiddishkeit, the values of Benad Chaveroi, the values of being a mensch, the values of integrity, the values of respect. And at the same time, plant those seeds and give over those values in a way where the child eventually, like Philip mentioned, my father mentioned, eventually in the future will take those seeds that you plant and bring them out to the future. Rabbi Feldman one time told me a story. I once was talking to him about a certain issue with one of my children. I'm just talking to him. I'm taking it's going.
Should I start? I'm not sure. Just whatever. Okay. That's how we fall. Okay. My phone is on the mic. Okay. Yeah. That's right. Beginning of my phone, he's turning off his computer. Let's speak from my phone. Okay. I don't see myself. Okay, are we there? Are we there? I know they can hear me.
Mr. Goldman, you're on and you're live. You're perfect from Rabbi Falk's phone.
Okay, wonderful. I just don't know where I was left off. Does anyone remember?
A story right. Rabbi Feldman was telling Rebbe about his son.
Okay, fine. Very good. Okay, so we're talking. If you want. One time I went to Rabbi Feldman. I was talking about one of the issues with one of my children, and I was figuring out how can I help him. Feldman told me a story, and I've used this story many times with the chinuch of my children. He told me a story about one of the Rabbanim in Telstar. I'm not going to use his name. Very, very big Talmid Chacham, a very big koyach in Telstar that's helped many, many people. We'll call him Rabbi Grossman for argument's sake. And I went to Rabbi Feldman was walking in the streets of Telstar, and he happened to notice one of the children of this Rabbi Grossman, per se, that was doing something that he felt wasn't appropriate for Rabbi Grossman's family. And when he came to this Rabbi Grossman, he said to him, Rabbi, I went in the street and I saw your son doing something that I thought wasn't appropriate. Now this Rabbi Grossman is a big chacham, and he realized that this is something that his son's going to outgrow. So he told Rabbi Feldman, he said, listen, I know that he did this thing, but I know one day the Grossman inside him is going to come out of him. The message over there was that this Rabbi Grossman, he planted seeds in the chinuch that he gave to his children, and he knew that one day those seeds that he planted will Hashem come out and be able to bring the Paris and bring the things to Klal Yisrael. He just needed the time to be able to work it out. So the message is that we're just trying to figure out how to plant those seeds. So how do we go about doing that? And what are the things that can let us be able to plant those? What are the seeds that we're trying to plant? And how do we go about doing that? So I have 5 points that I think I want to say. And maybe that was something that can help everybody. Again, we can't answer everyone's personal questions in chinuch, but we can give ideas, and each person, according to his siyata d'shmaya and his seichel, can do what he feels is appropriate. There's a famous story with the Chazon Ish, that there was a father on the day of his son's bris that came to the Chazon Ish, and he asked him, Rebbe, when should I start to be mechanech my son? So he said, well, how old are you? He said, I'm 23. He said, 23 years ago. Like we mentioned before, the biggest chinuch that a person can give to his children is the example that he sets. They watch every single move that you make. They observe you, they learn from you, they question you, and hopefully they can take those things to the future. I remember one time I came home and I was rushing up to yeshiva, and I see my oldest son Mordechai benching, and he has both his hands on top of his legs, and he's benching and going like this and going like this. And at one point I said, Mordechai, enough already. What are you doing with your pants? You're going to wear your pants? It's okay, stopped it. And then I was rushing up to yeshiva, and it was time for me to bench, and all of a sudden I find myself, rubbing my leg when I'm doing that. Oh, now I know where he got it from. There's a story that I heard from a Pesach Krohn. He once spoke in yeshiva when I was in Yeshiva Smir, Ben Asdarim. Told over a story that there was once a father that was called into the principal's office about the problem of his son stealing school supplies from the office. And the father was furious. I don't understand. This child has everything, and I don't understand how can he do such a thing like that. And the father answered back, I don't understand. Why should he take school supplies from the office? I bring plenty of supplies home from my office. Notice, what did he learn it from? He learned it from him. A person has to realize the example that you set with your values, with the person that you are, is the first seed that you plant into the chinuch of your children. The second thing, which I think is a very important thing, and that is that a person has to try. We've talked about this. You have to make your home and your family a secure and comfortable atmosphere for your children. And that is the number one way that a person can accomplish that is through the way that he shows the respect and the shalom bayis to his wife at home. When the children see the shalom bayis, when they see the respect, it gives them a sense of security that they can respect their parents. I remember once Rav Moshe Aaron Stern Zatzal, he was giving us a vad, and he said, if mommy is a shmata in Tati's eyes, and Tati is a shmata in mommy's eyes, then both parents are shmatas in the child's eyes. And then he goes to look to find his chinuch in other places. If the house is a place which the children can feel is a secure place, the shalom bayis and the relationship with their parents, of seeing the relationship with their parents, then that makes a settled atmosphere to them to be able to take from their parents and to be able to grow and to go further. That's point number 2. Number 3, Rabbi Falk mentioned at the end, how important is the koyach of tefillah. Every day, a person has to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for siyata d'shmaya, and if Baruch Hashem things are going good, then we thank Hashem. Thank you, please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, keep the things as they're going. There's so many places in tefillah every day, in Birchas HaTorah, when we say, that we, us and our descendants and the descendants of Klal Yisrael, they should all know your name, and they should learn Torah for its own sake. You can't get better words than that. That's B'siyata D'Shmaya with the chinuch of your children. By Uval Tzion, which we say at the end of davening, he opens our heart in Torah. He should open up our heart in Torah. And he should put into our heart the loving him and the fearing him. And that we should be able to fulfill his will with a full heart. So we shouldn't wind up coming to a point where we're using pointless efforts and coming to a point of confusion. The koyach of tefillah is so important. That's a seed that you can plant throughout day and night, all the time, and avoid many of the problems. Now, point number 4, which also Rabbi Falk spoke about, is you can't force Yiddishkeit on your children. A person has to try as much as he can to make Yiddishkeit geschmack. He has to make a pleasure to be a Yid. People ask all the time, when should I bring my son to davening? I'll tell you what I do in my house. I don't take my children to davening until they start to beg me and ask me, Tati, please, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, in 5 before they start reading, please, can I come? Can I come? Can I come? No, you have to be older. We'll wait, you'll see, one day you'll come, one day you'll come. Until they really nudge me. When's the first time that I take them to davening? Shabbos Mincha. Why? It's short. The Shemona is short. They're opening up the Aron HaKodesh. They're taking out the Sefer Torah. They go to the Sefer Torah, the Hagba Galila. It's fun. It's exciting. It's something which they can handle. But if I take them and I sit them down for long davening and have them tell them they have to be quiet, before I know it, they're peeling off the Formica from the standards and they're destroying this, and then they're getting frustrated, and then they can't handle it. So of course I want them to come to shul when they're ready. But when they're coming there, I want it to be fun. Friday night when they come to the yeshiva, we have Kabbalah Shabbos in the yeshiva. My daughters are waiting outside to take them back down right after Kabbalah Shabbos. I'm not going to have them sit there, a 4-year-old or 5-year-old that can't understand through the Sikha and through Ma'ariv. Making it geschmack. Like Rabbi Falk mentioned, how powerful a tool the Shabbos to this are. I remember many years ago when my wife and I were in America for a Shabbos, and we came to someone's house. It was a late Friday night, and we walked into the house, and the one of the parents came to us and said, "Thank goodness we got the kids out of the way. Now we can enjoy our meal." What Shabbos for? Shabbos is to relate with your family, the chance to be able to get over the values, the sudas, the enjoyment, the zmiras, like Rabbi Folk mentioned, the stories and the going to shul with them and davening with them and coming back and speaking to them and relating to them and hearing the things that are going on in their life. If we work on making Yiddishkeit geschmack pleasant, then that's something which is a seed that you're planting into them, that they don't resent it, they're not running away from it. And then when it comes to that point, they're not running away from the Shabbos table because it's geschmack, it's pleasant. The last point, just point number 5, which I think that is very important, comes to the point of how do we deal when we sometimes have to discipline? How do we plant those seeds that we can properly discipline and tell our children something when something they don't want to hear? At one point, Shlomo Melech tells us initially, if a person holds back his staff, which will seem like hitting, doesn't necessarily mean hitting, but it means reprimanding your child. If a person holds himself back from doing that, he doesn't love his child, he hates his child. But if he loves him, then he puts him in his proper direction. The child needs to be directed, he wants to be directed. But what's the secret? What's the technique how to be able to do that? So I'm going to say over now a very hush of a point from the Nesiva Shalom, which I think that every person has to know this idea and has to know this. It's for success in Chinuch, it's for success in Shalom Bayis, and it's for success in just having own self-value. The Gemara says that the sun never sees the side of the moon that's pogum, that's damaged, right? The moon is not full the entire month. There's one side that seems to be dark and the other side which is lit up. The sun always faces that side of the moon that's lit up. What's the Gemara trying to tell me with that? Listen closely, everybody. The Nesiva Shalom says, the sun is the mashpia, is the koyach, the power of influence. The moon is the mushpa, is the one that's being influenced. The influencer only has the power to have influence on the one that's being influenced if it doesn't see the thing that it's influencing as damaged goods, as something that's pugum. You can know that there's faults, you can know that there's things that are lacking, but as soon as you see that child, or as soon as you see that other person as pugum, as damaged, he will know that that's what you feel about him, and then you lose your power of influence. And therefore, as much as it's our responsibility to direct our children, but they always have to feel being machshav of them and realizing their importance and how much we value them and how much we see, and that gives us the power to be able to tell them the things that we want to be able to tell them. However, and this is something which I try to implement in my house all the time, whenever I have to tell my child something, sometimes to reprimand them or tell them something, I always take them afterwards and I say, okay, let's sit down for a second. Why did Tati do that? What do you think was the reason why Tati did that? Because sometimes we don't realize it, but they didn't understand what you meant. It could be that you made a mistake. If a child doesn't feel that what you did was justified, if a child doesn't feel that you took things into the right control, then that's something which later on in life you can wind up finding out how much damage came out from that action. Whereas if you explain to the child and he understands you and it's justified, that it's something which he can come to terms with, and like we said before, he wants to be guided, he wants to be told. A person always has to make sure that he follows that through. Now, the last thing that I'm going to say right now is very short. I once went to speak to one of my son's mashgichim, Rav Naftali Kaplan. I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you, Rabbi Folk. Glad you came here. Naftali Kaplan. Naftali Kaplan is a tremendous mechanech. One time in one of Rav Nassan Tzvi's branches of Meir Yeshiva, he saw there was some type of trouble going on in one of those branches, he invited Rav Naftali Kaplan to be there for a number of days to just observe, to see what he can suggest to be able to help the yeshiva. Tremendous mechanech. So I was asking him with certain things, how do I, deal with certain things in the chinuch? So he told me a very important secret. He said, you know what? I'll tell you what I do in the yeshiva. Sometimes I act stupid. Sometimes I act and I let the boys fool me. I let them think that I don't know what's going on. I didn't realize. When do I do that? When I realize it's something that he's going to figure out on his own. You have to know what's going on with your children. You have to know what's going on, but you have to know when to let them work it out. If they're not going to work it out, eventually at one point you talk to them about it. But just like we said before, like from the Rabbi Grossman per se, right? That one day he's going to see the Grossman and him coming out of him over here as well. Sometimes a boy has to be able to, a child, a son, daughter, has to be able to just work it out. Imagine sometimes we do things that we're not happy about doing. We sometimes need the chance to work it out ourselves and come out of it. And that's the, like our folk mentioned before, you always have to have your finger on the pulse. But you have to know when you're taking action, when you're saying something, when you're not saying something. So again, the 5 points that I think for planting seeds in the meantime is, number one, the example that you set, like the Chazon Ish. The second thing is making your home an atmosphere, a secure atmosphere for your children to be able to, to feel that they can take from their parents. Number three, the koyach of tefillah, trying to invest as much as you can into the koyach of tefillah. Number four, making your home the expression of Yiddishkeit and Torah and mitzvahs and the value, something that's pleasant, something that's geschmack, something that's enjoyable. And number five, that when it does come to the point where you have to be able to reprimand your children, to be able to know that you're not telling them in any way that they're pogum, that they're damaged, because then you lose the power of influence. And to make sure that you give them this space to know when they can work it out themselves. And always to make sure that when you do have to say something, that they understood what you meant so that they can be relaxed with that. Everyone should have Siyata D'Shmaya. Again, we're just sharing some of the ideas that we implement in our home. And hopefully, if that can be a help to everyone else, everyone should matzliach and b'chol enyonim.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goldman. Very insightful. All the Rebbeim, tremendous insights. I'm hoping that everyone enjoyed them as much as I did, and I'm sure each Rebbe enjoys the other Rebbe's insights. What we'd like to do is open it up now for a few questions. Please feel free to ask. What we're going to try to do is, in order to get a little bit of, just kind of keep things moving, that if somebody wants to ask a question, they should raise their hand, which they can do, obviously, automatically. Before we open it up for questions, I just want to ask a question which was sent to us already now a few days ago, and I just felt it would be the right thing to say over that question, because he responded quickly to the interest of asking a question. Anyway, so I'm going to throw this out to either the mashgiach, to Rabbi Falk, who I don't know if he's now hiding. No, he got it back. I said he's working it out. Okay, good. And I think this is a good chinuch example of if somebody needs something, you kind of do in the background, you take care of what needs to be taken care of. That's also a thing. Anyway, so what I want to do is, I see there is, okay, there is a request for a question, but I just want to ask this question, and then we'll go to, who do we have over here? Yeah, Tehani. Okay, just 1 minute. There was a question that came already a few days ago from Moshe David Schickler. And he wants to know, let's say you have a certain child that has certain extra educational needs. Could be he has ADHD, whatever it may be. And the other children don't have those special needs. So how does one balance between giving attention to the child who has the special needs and the children that don't? And how does one explain to the other children why you're giving special preferential treatment? Right, Mashgiach?
Once again, could you repeat the question, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah. If you have it, say one child. Moshe David Schickler wants to know, one child is particularly extra challenging ADHD, or he has certain special needs. And because of that, the parents have to give him extra attention. Now, the other children are kind of jealous. And I mean, listen, I asked you, Mashkiach, but it could be, Rabbi Falk or Rabbi Goldman also, please also should feel free to respond. But let's say the other children, they're not given the same treatment. How does one deal with the children that are not getting the special treatment? How does one explain to them? How does one make them feel that they're not being, that they're not like second-class citizens? How does one balance between children who get special attention and the children that don't get the special attention?
Okay, I wish that my son Yerachmiel can answer the question. He has a special child, a very special child, and he requires special attention. But I know he takes aside his children one by one and explains to them, I can't hear. He explains to them, that listen, I know you'll understand, but I just have to spend a little bit more time. I have to do this with this child, and I think you understand why. And if they don't, then you explain to them. But you have to take them aside and explain to them, and they'll understand. Only if you just ignore them, and then it's going to bother them. But if you explain to them, again, they're adults; they can understand it. And I want to just have a opportunity also that I have I just want to say over the stipend, which we all I think all of us said anyhow, but the stipend says very simple. Chinuch Habanim is 50% tefillah and 50% shalom bayis. And you can have a different approach than your wife. You can be lenient, your wife can be strict, right? But you have to be on the same page. 50% tefillah and 50% shalom bayis. Okay.
Excellent. Good. I get the message from one has to talk to the children, follow through, not just assume it's going to be understood, but it needs special attention. That's what I understood. Any complaints, please? If you I was told you wanted to ask a question. Oh, you lowered it.
Yeah.
You had your hand, but not. Yeah.
We actually have two questions.
Please.
Okay, so the first one is for Rabbi Goldman, and the second one is for Rabbi Falk. The first one is for Rabbi Goldman. We have two boys, aged 9 and 10, and it's about the shul, going to shul. So we live in America, and we live in a community that we're trying to move out of, but it's not a community that we are on the same level, and we don't want the boys playing. No one's begging their parents to go to shul. And
we have neighbors that don't wear yarmulkes, the fathers, let alone not go to shul, and they're considered Shomer Shabbos. And this is a neighborhood in Lakewood, and we're trying our best to move, but in the meantime, we're here. If our kids don't come to shul, then we get into a situation where they're gambling and doing all kinds of things.
With baseball cards.
With baseball cards, with different things going on Shabbos. So we try to encourage, we bribe, we give them Slurpees, prizes, but up to what point are we supposed to push them to go versus the alternative? In other words, I understand maybe not pushing a kid to go to shul, but the alternative of not going to shul is pretty bad. It becomes a very empty day. It's like not even Shabbos.
And the other, okay.
Well, first question is, why don't they want to go to shul?
Because they're normal kids that don't want to go to shul, and their neighbors are not going to shul. Why should they?
They would rather play with their neighbor's dog.
I hear. Okay, so I mean, the first thing that I would try to do, is try to be able to explain to them why it's important for them, why it's something that, it's something which will be useful for them in life, and then just bring them there for a limited amount of time. So they can just get the feeling of.
It's not a possibility because the closest shul we can go to that has any kind of chinuch that I want to show my kids, not just playing with security guards and trading baseball cards, is across a busy highway, so I can't bring them home back and forth. It's either they come or they don't come.
Mm-hmm. Is there a short tefillah that you can bring them for?
mincha on Shabbos, but then their day is gone. If they come in the morning, if they don't, in other words, if they're up at 7:30 in the morning, by the time I get home from shul at, let's say, 11 o'clock, their day is gone. You can't talk to them. They're like in this kind of...
They've been playing baseball.
They've been playing every sport, everything. It wasn't Shabbos for them. It's over. And they didn't come to shul Friday night. So Shabbos never started. So to expect them to go for mincha, they're already sweaty. They're already burnt out. They're already enticed by everything else going on. Their day is done. It's pustin leidik. There's nothing left to the Shabbos.
It's a good question you're asking. I mean, do both you and your wife go together to shul, or you just go?
No.
You go.
No, in Lakewood, most shuls.
The ladies section, not really, in the yeshivish communities, is not very welcoming.
To the ladies.
At least where we live now. So.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good question. I need a little bit of time to think about this one. I mean, when are you planning on moving?
As
soon as Hashem lets us.
As soon as we could find the place.
We've been trying to find a house for over a year.
It's very hard to find in Lakewood.
And how long is the davening there?
2 hours and 20 minutes.
Again, I can't take responsibility for this, but I tell you what I would probably do. I would probably just take them there for part of the davening and go back home with them, and then daven with them the rest at home at that point, just to be able to give them somewhat of the experience. Because if you wait till they're too old to be going to shul, they're not going to be able to take anything from that. But to keep them there for a long time.
I didn't miss minyan for 18 years, so I'm not about to start now. I didn't miss a single minyan throughout the coronavirus. I walked 70 miles for a minyan. So for you to tell me to miss half a davening, that you got to be a lot.
No, I'm not telling you to miss davening. I'm just trying to work on figuring out how to make the compromise between, your children being able to be part of shul. I hear. Let me think about this one. I'm going to give you my email address. Okay, maybe we could be in touch personally that way. I just want to think about it a little bit, and we can be in touch personally. Is that okay?
Thank you so much. Yes.
Okay, my email address is mmygoldman.
Okay.
@gmail.
Yeah, hopefully Joey's going to post it, and I think we should post, if it's okay with the other rebbeim also, we'll post their emails, and so the questions we ask. Mashgiach, Rabbi Falk, that'll be all right?
Yeah, sure.
We had one more question for Rabbi Falk.
Could I first say something about what you asked before, the first question?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, my wife grew up in Southern California, Los Angeles, North Hollywood, and they were Leonard Stark from family, and most of the people in the shul were far from their level of frumkeit. And what my father-in-law did, and what my wife, has told me, is that she was given a feeling all the time that she had a mission, and that she was special, and she was definitely different than all these other kids, and she felt somewhat responsibility, and the children have to be trained to feel this, and it's not an easy thing to do, but that they should understand that they're very, very special kids, and that that they have a relationship, and Baruch Hashem, they were zeichet to be in a family that understands what davening is, what a shul is, and they have this opportunity and a bit of a responsibility to be an example for the shul. And I think, like what Rabbi Goldman says, you should take them for short periods of time. And that you haven't missed a minyan for 35 years is remarkable. But I once heard from an Adam Gadol, when someone had a shaila as to what to do as far as going to minyan or doing some other mitzvah, he told them that Yiddishkeit is not a baseball game.
Right.
And we're not worried about streaks. We're worried about, in each situation, what is the right thing for me to do? So now I think you really have to ask an Adam Gadol as to what the right thing to do is, if you should forfeit, and forgo some of your davening there with the minyan all the time. But if it's really better for your children and it's crucial, so then I think that probably is the right thing to do. And I think a Kadosh Baruch Hu would be very happy if you took a break in your streak, your 35-year streak, and you probably hold the record. And Mitzvah Hashem, when the time comes and what he wants you to do is to go back and continue your streak, so then you should continue your streak. But I think every situation we have to really think about what is the thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to do right now. That's the first thing. Now I'm happy to hear the second question.
Okay, so the second question, first of all, thank you. The question is, you were talking about teaching your kids how to read if the yeshiva says they're doing fine, and then when you do it at home with the kid and you realize that they're not doing so well. So we have a son who, the same thing, the Rebbe said that he's doing fine, but when my husband does homework with him, his Kriya is not so great. He's 10 years old.
Right.
So I pulled out. I don't do homework with my son because I let it go. My husband is much more on top of it. And we disagree very much on how to do the homework with them. I think we should just, let it go. My husband is much more on top of it, and you want to talk? He likes to make my child go over and over and over again, and my child gets very, very, very annoyed, and
right.
he wants to yell and get up and run away, and I don't know what to do. But my husband's coming from the fact that
your husband wants to yell and run away, or your child wants to yell and run away?
Both of them. Both.
Okay.
But like you said, my husband wants him to be able, my husband goes to shul and he sees people who can't read, and he doesn't want that for my son. So he really, really wants my son to, chazer and chazer and chazer, and my son doesn't necessarily want to. So right. What do we do?
Okay, first of all, I think you should, go to someone who's I don't know if you've ever, had your son evaluated or assessed, but there could be that he has a problem that makes it difficult for him to read. It's very, very common. That would be the first thing I would do, because I have a chavrusa he's a dentist in Telstone. He's a brilliant, brilliant scientist. He's published articles in all kinds of very prestigious journals, and he can't read. He can't read Hebrew. He's dyslexia, and he just can't read. And if you find out early, so then you can save your son a lot of difficulty and suffering. And it could be you can solve the problem, right? That's the first thing. I think you should certainly, check out that avenue. I think it's very important that your husband or whoever can, control himself and not get angry should sit down and work with your son in reading. Now, maybe you can't do it, and maybe your husband can't do it. So then maybe you should bring in someone from outside who has the patience and also is maybe not so personally invested, and the emotions are so strong when it's your son and you feel that he's not succeeding in getting clarity on the material. It could be that you should get him a tutor, someone who can help him. Maybe there's a young Rebbe who could help your son with the Kriya. But I think it's a very important thing that a child learns to read.
But even if he has ABA therapy, he's on the spectrum, so he has so many therapies for behavioral issues. Is this something that we argue is this something that he should be getting help with on top of everything else?
It's hard for me to assess your son. I'm not, a professional psychologist that I can, assess exactly. Again, you have to be honest and real about what your son's capabilities are. If your son, his abilities are very limited and he can't handle all of these things, so then you have to really decide what are the most critical things to do. So, that's a judgment that I think with professional people, you should sit down and really, decide. Right. I think reading is a very important thing. I think reading is something that will haunt him in the future if he can't read. Right. And I'm sure that he wants to read, but it's very hard and frustrating for him, and that's why he's not able to do it. And he certainly needs someone who's calm and can help him, because whatever frustration you have, right. I'm sure his frustration is
triple
compounded, right?
Yeah.
So much more than your frustrations. So a lot of times somebody outside can help. I brought people in to learn with my children when I felt that they could be, that it is beneficial and necessary. Again, you have to, you're the parents and you're there and you can see, you have to juggle and really assess what he can really do. And within the framework of his academic abilities, you have to make the decisions on what, to invest in and what to to work on maybe at a later time.
Okay.
I hope that was helpful.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Anybody else that feels they would like to ask a question? Oh, Mashkeyev wants to say something. Sorry, Mashkeyev, please.
Okay. I just wanted to say that I don't know if you heard the background. I was going back and forth. My grandson, Aaron Wolpe, is right now having a Zoom vort. It's between the two families. It's all Zoom, and because it has to be, and in the deepest dark Africa, South Africa, and so Aaron Wolpe now became a chassan, and so he's having a vort back. So I have to go back and forth, and that's why. So I apologize if I was in and out. That's all. But Mazel Tov. It's a very big simcha. It's a very big simcha. It's mamish a corona vort because he went back and was stuck there. He couldn't leave, and in fact his brother Binyamin came, but Hashem made him stuck there so he could meet his beshert, his kala, and they become engaged. So okay, I'm sorry. I just want to explain. Thank you.
Are there any other questions as of this point? There are definitely other questions that have been raised in letters, but anybody as of right now would like to? I'd like to ask the Rebbeim, how does one stay calm? Was there a question on the floor? I'm sorry. Is there somebody? Yeah. I'm Yosef, please. Joey, you want to ask?
Sorry, there's somebody, Ellie Pollock raised his hand.
Ellie Pollock. I'm sorry, I didn't see. Yeah, Ellie, please. I'm sorry, I didn't see before. I'm sorry.
Hi. Thank you, rabbis, for spending time with us. We appreciate it. Like this, I just wanted to know if a school is considering, or if the teacher, all you hear is negative, as opposed to using terminology as your son needs or your daughter needs upgrades. In this area, all you hear is failure. Is that a wise decision to just, at a certain point, just walk away from the school and realize that they're not workable if their viewpoint is that they can't be seen as a failure? They'd rather point the kid as a failure. It happens. I was definitely like that. I'm seeing that I'm seeing that in the next generation now also. How do I look at that? I mean, I tried working, with the particular school or whatever it was, but at a certain point you realize that they're never going to be, your kid is always going to be a failure. Even if you try doing, as much as you do, they can't be successful with your kid because they don't want to be a failure. It was a little confusing, but basically if they can't handle a cookie cutter kid, or if they can't handle what they're looking for, then your kid has to be a failure. It happens that they, in other words, if they would view it as solution based, there wouldn't be a terminology called failure. It would be different words that would be used, in my opinion. So what do you work with the school, or you just walk away from the school? Because I don't think a kid can succeed. I think, I think Rabbi Folk was very much into, I think all the rabbis really touched upon this, is that you have to be the number one fan. Yeah, this is for anybody that can handle that. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, can I?
Please, Mashkeyev, please.
First, I assume that in the beginning you went and asked him, is there anything positive you could tell me about my child? And do you see any potential in him? Do you see, but if it's totally negative and they can't find anything positive, then you have to look for another place that will be able to bring out his good points. But at the very beginning, I would have gone to, first I would have asked the teacher on the phone, whatever, there's nothing good about how, do you notice something good about him? Can you And we've gone down and spoken to the person and tried to get the teacher to build him up, et cetera. But if this is totally negative and they all going to relate to him in a negative sense, get out of there. Good luck. Find a new school.
Either Rabbi Falk or Rabbi Golden want to add anything?
It doesn't sound like a very good school to me. I agree with the Mash. I think if you can find him a different school, I think you should definitely find him a different school. But if you're in a situation where this is the only school around, so then you have to make a different, judgment. But if there are other schools that will cater to the needs of your son, then I think you should move into a different school. Your son has challenges. Your son has, a lot. He has his strengths and he has things that can be developed. You have to be in an environment that appreciates, who he is and wants to work with him. To push our kids into schools that don't really, feel that they can work with our children. So I think it's counterproductive for everybody.
I want to just make a personal comment. I have to apologize. In terms of Chinuch, Chinuch even continues if your child's 37. My son he's visiting from Chutz La'aretz, and just for Hashkach, he came in. He was in Europe, wanted to get away, and he's here for just another day. So my Chinuch mitzvah is to wish everybody well. I don't think the meeting needs to end. I don't want to end it because I need to leave, but I wanted to thank everyone. I wanted to thank the Mashkiach, Rabbi Falk, Rabbi Goldman, Oren, Joey, and I do believe there is enough. I have a sense that there's a big topic that we want to continue with this, and it's a Shem. So we will be in touch about follow-up sessions, and thank you all very much. But please, just because I'm stepping out, nobody else should feel that they need to go. Now, it could be the Mashkiach has a board to go.
Board to go to.
Right.
So do we.
And I think Rabbi Falk has to get his phone back. So I don't know.
Can I ask one question?
Rabbi Goldman has another same board.
Same board. I do apologize. I'm gonna step out. I wish everybody well, and hopefully we'll see you again very soon.
Right. Can I ask a question to some of the Rebbeim that remain in the room?
Tomorrow.
Sure.
Okay, so this is just a I don't know if it's a quick question, but it's regarding friendships. I'm finding that my oldest daughter has a friendship, and it's a very close friendship, and it's I would say it's her best friend, and she's in her class, and she's her neighbor, and while she's a very sweet girl, and really has a lot of potential to be successful in many ways, she also struggles in a lot of other ways. And because of that, her friend struggles in school and struggles sometimes with authority. So her friend likes to point out why the school is dumb and the teacher is dumb and the topics are dumb, and her friend has a pretty negative approach to these things in general. Now, it's usually you try to distance your child, but under the circumstances, because they're in the same class and they're neighbors, and we live a little bit far out, and there aren't a lot of kids in her class around, we find ourselves to be a little bit stuck. It's very difficult to distance the friendship, and I guess I'm looking for ways to try to fight it from within. I try my best to compliment the friend the way the Rebbeim have been talking about, trying to build her self-confidence also, but my question is there anything that I can do on my own side to help build my daughter's confidence up so that she could kind of fight against the negativity around her and be confident enough around to not let someone else's experience.
Mosh, do you want to answer?
Mosh isn't on his screen.
Okay. So what I would try to do, I had a similar situation with my daughter, who she was in high school and she had some friends who they were nice girls, but they were negative influence, and they weren't really good for her, and it's sort of what you're describing. And, we sat down with my daughter and we explained to her, we spoke to her and we told her, how wonderful she is and, how special she is. And we tried to build her up that she should realize that she really wants to be in a different place and where these girls are going. And B'li Ayin Hara, it took a little bit of a while, but she thought about it and she realized, she began to realize herself that these girls were interested in certain things that really wasn't where she wanted to get to. And in the end, she did break off that relationship because we didn't put down the friends and we didn't, they're wonderful girls, but you're really going in a different direction than those girls. I think that's one approach. I think the other approach really is to maybe try to enlist your daughter in trying to help this girl get out of her negativity. And as if you can impress on your daughter how positive she is and how, it's so sad and so hard for this girl that she's living in this negativity and it makes her unhappy and it's not good for her. And if together they can work on it, so then if she sees it as her job to help this girl, so then it could benefit your daughter, because if she has to be mechazik her, it's going to be if the mechazik the other girl, it's going to be mechazik her, and it could possibly help this other girl. That's what I think I would try to do.
Okay, shkoyach, I appreciate it, Rabbi.
Sure.
Is there anybody else who has a question? Rabbi Harlap left the room, so we're kind of you could just raise your hand and I'll enable your. Anybody?
Okay, great.
Okay, so just to finish off then, as Rabbi Harlap said, since this topic seems to, it's a pretty serious and important topic and there's a lot to talk about, so we will look to potentially do either a second event or some follow-up shiurim on the topic in the next little while. You can always email the yeshiva or any of the rebbeim that we put their email addresses up in the chat within the last 10-15 minutes. If you have any questions, and you can reach out to me as well. I'm going to put my email on the group if you have any questions that you want asked to any of the other rebbeim in the yeshiva. And we will hopefully, Emirtz Hashem, try to do this again soon.
Very good. Thank you very, very much to everyone.
Thank you very much, Kol Tov, everyone.
Shkaya.